My daughter, where is she?
I don't f***ing know!
My daughter, where is she? Where do I find
Your daughter and her friend that were giving us gifts.
I can take you down there!
You can't just leave me out here.
I won't.
¿Dónde están las muchachas?
It's Daddy.
At the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to a man named Sean, a father who is looking for his daughter in Mexico, because a few days ago, his daughter named Lee left without permission to watch a concert with her friend, but since then they have never returned home. Sean suspects that they were kidnapped by the locals, especially since the city in the area is known as one of the most dangerous cities in the world, and he was even more convinced when he found his daughter's car and glasses in a junkyard. Sean then reported his discovery to the local police, but when he returned to the junkyard, suddenly his daughter's car was gone. As a result, the police did not believe Sean's report and they suspected that Lee was kidnapped by her own friend. Then they also promised to contact Sean immediately if they got new clues. But for now, Sean was asked to return to America because the city he came to was too dangerous for foreigners.
You should go home, Mr. Beckwith. This is no place for you. Val here will escort you back to the border.
Sean was finally forced to go home without succeeding in finding his daughter, and when he arrived home, he could only stroke his chest while calming his wife. At the same time, his youngest child named Lauren looked disappointed in her father, who failed to find her sister. And as a father, Sean also felt disappointed in himself for not being able to take better care of his daughter. But at this point, he didn't know what to do anymore, and he was also quite sure that the police there were involved in the kidnapping of his daughter.
The police say, Sean.
They're in on it. I know.
The next day, Sean was visited by his old friend named Max, and he was a former Special Forces. Here, it was finally revealed who Sean really was, who turned out to be the most respected former Special Forces in America, and he was also Max's direct superior during his time in the military. The two of them had been fighting for years until they finally got bored and decided to retire. The two of them then sat on the porch of the house while thinking of ways to find Lee and her friend. Max also suggested that Sean get back his gun and cut them down for his daughter. But Sean didn't want to use violence for now. After all, he didn't know who kidnapped his daughter. After meeting with Max, Sean came to the American Embassy office in Mexico to find out more about crime in the area. According to embassy officials, there are hundreds of American citizens who disappeared while passing through the city where Sean's daughter disappeared, and they were all kidnapped by a very powerful cartel, so it is likely that Lee and her friend also have the same fate as them. The cartel in question not only sells drugs but also traffics in humans. Besides that, the cartel also has an army equivalent to the military, and people call it a mercenary cartel.
They call themselves Los Mercenarios.
But unfortunately, the embassy officials did not want to help Sean in investigating the kidnapping case because he seemed very resigned and did not want to deal with the cartel, and of course it made Sean very angry.
Make the mistake of underestimating what I'm saying here.
Thanks for your help.
Sean then decided to leave the embassy office, and when in front of the lobby, he saw a news story about a very inhumane cartel crime, where cartel members slaughtered everyone who got in the way of their business, and what's worse is that the government did not dare to intervene in this matter. After seeing the news, Sean and his wife invited journalists to cover the kidnapping of his daughter so that this case would go viral and get more attention from many people.
Without a word, Lee, we love you.
The news also spread widely until it reached the ears of the cartel boss named Victor. From the news, he came to know that Sean was a former Special Forces who was highly respected, and he was also very sure that sooner or later, Sean would definitely attack his cartel. Therefore, Victor ordered his men to catch the person who had kidnapped Lee and her friends, and it turned out that the kidnappers in question were corrupt policemen who were at the beginning of the film earlier. They both kidnapped the girls as gifts for cartel members, but this time they had chosen the wrong target, which would certainly endanger Victor and his members. Victor then ordered his men to finish off the two policemen. One of them asked Victor for forgiveness, and the policeman named Montoya promised to pay for his mistakes. Hearing that Victor also gave him one more chance to clean everything up, Victor then called his younger brother Carlos, who was the most brutal commander in their cartel. and at this time he was still the #1 trust in terms of cleaning up problems even in a violent way. Then Victor told him to slaughter Sean and his family because he wanted to send a message to everyone that his cartel was indeed very powerful.
Siempre he confiado en ti.
The next day, Sean woke up early to feed his favorite horse, while at the same time Carlos and his troops had started moving and they had crossed the American border. Even they all wore bulletproof vests and also carried very complete weaponry to kill Sean. Sean, who was shooting wild dogs, suddenly saw the group and felt something was wrong. He immediately warned his wife and daughter to take refuge in the house while he would withstand their attacks. While surviving the onslaught of the cartels, Sean asked his wife to immediately call the police. At first they had difficulty because Carlos brought a signal antidote, but fortunately they were still able to contact one of the nearest police, and their report was then received by a policeman named Jeff, who was then on the side of the road.
Sheriff, we have reports of automatic gunfire at the Beckwith Ranch.
Back to the previous place, Carlos' troops began to surround every corner of the house. They even tried to break down the door, and luckily Sean's defense was still very strong, but over time Sean began to run out of strength to hold them. As a result, he deliberately led Carlos and his cartel to enter the house one by one. Then one of the cartels asked why Carlos hadn't given the signal when his opponent was only one person. Not to slow down the time, but Carlos didn't want to be rash because what he was facing was the most brutal former special forces in America. Sean has spent decades in the military and until now is still alive, meaning he is indeed very strong and should not be underestimated. Carlos then ordered his men to enter one by one, and they had to disperse to all corners of the house. These cartels thought that they were hunting Sean, but in fact it was Sean who was hunting them. Here Sean moved like a ghost, where he managed to finish them off one by one without having to show himself. Carlos also looked very upset because his men were getting less and less, and he finally entered the house with all his troops, including Montoya, the corrupt cop. They tried to urge Sean to come out of hiding, but Sean did not want to fall for their tricks, and instead of defending, Sean attacked first. As a result of the previous shootout, many of Carlos's men fell miserably. Seeing that the cartels immediately felt anxious, as well as Montoya, who was scared and hid behind the wall. But Carlos didn't like it when his men became cowards. He finally told Montoya to look for Sean, but suddenly Sean appeared and immediately pointed a gun. At the same time, they had a policeman who had been called by Lauren, and he immediately contacted headquarters and forensics because there were many bodies in the place. Meanwhile, Carlos, who saw his arrival, immediately ordered one of his men to finish off the policeman. The cartel shot him blindly, and afterward he checked the police car to make sure he was really dead, but it turned out that the policeman was very smart. On the other hand, Sean was still involved in a shootout against Carlos and his cartel troops, until finally he decided to go out through the window. As a result, the shootout continued outside the house between them, and also Jeff, the policeman who had helped Sean. Unfortunately, the shootout claimed Jeff's life, so Sean had to fight alone again. But because his ammunition began to run out, he also told his wife to bring a car. And after that, Sean and his family left as quickly as possible from there. Carlos did not remain silent, and he immediately chased Sean while shooting him from behind. Of course, this made Sean very angry that he finally decided to get out of the car and then brutally slaughtered all the remaining cartels. But Sean left Carlos because he needed some information, and Sean tortured him until Carlos finally told the location of his headquarters. After getting it, Sean immediately shot his head without hesitation.
We own the whole city. You will need me there.
I won't.
Then Sean asked his daughter and wife to go to a safe place and contact the police to ask for protection. Meanwhile, he himself will go to Victor's headquarters, which is of course for revenge and save his eldest daughter. After that, Sean contacted Max to ask for help to take revenge, and as a good former colleague, Max was happy to accept the invitation. He also brought his complete weapons because he knew that his enemies must be very large. In the evening, they finally arrived at Victor's headquarters, and here Sean looked at Victor's movements, which seemed to be on edge, especially since Carlos, his brother, had died at Sean's hands. Then when Victor was off guard, Sean and Max began to finish off the guards one by one at the place. Hearing the gunshots, Victor rushed to call for more reinforcements, but it didn't work because Sean and Max had already gone crazy in that place. After being satisfied having fun, the two of them also broke into Victor's room while pointing their guns. Here, Sean looks very angry when he sees Victor's face as if asking for pity. As a result, he gets out of control and immediately beats him until he bleeds. But Sean didn't kill him right away because he wanted to make him tormented by the pain of his cruelty. When he was satisfied beating him, Sean forced Victor to take him to the place where the women were kidnapped. When they got there, Sean and Max moved carefully because they didn't know if Victor had set a trap in that place. And sure enough, there were several guards who were on standby.
¿Dónde están las muchachas?
Sean did not remain silent. Then he immediately entered and eliminated all existing cartel members, and finally Sean was able to meet his beloved daughter again. Max then suggested that Sean immediately take his daughter and her friend away, while he would first play with Victor before sending him to the grave. After that, Max cut off Victor's head and he showed it in the city while saying, "This is the result if you dare to disturb innocent people." At the end of the movie, Sean's family returned to normal and lived peacefully as ranchers on the American border. And after the brutal revenge, the movie ended.